listeners. Welcome to another episode of Romance Unraveled. This is your host, Jacob Bozen. And for this week, we have a new guest. Her name is Catherine York. I don't know her personally, but she submitted on one of our forums to come and be a guest for this show. Apparently, she has a really crazy story for us today. Catherine, let's have you introduce yourself.
Hi, Jacob. Thank you for having me on your show. Uh, my name is Catherine York, and I live in Massachusetts, and I'm the host of a podcast myself called Call Her Cat. Um, I'm a mom. I work part-time as a vet tech with animals, and I'm happy to share my story with you today.
Perfect. What is your podcast about?
My podcast is about shining a light on all types of addiction, be it food, drugs, alcohol, sex, gambling, and the recovery that that person went through to get where they are, and any hope they might have to share.
I bet that's a really important conversation to be had. It probably is really enlightening as far as the conversations that you hold.
It is, you know, at my lowest, because I'm in recovery myself, um, I know how hard it was to make that journey, and just trying to bring hope where I can, especially in the times that we're in.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. Well, today seems like you have quite the story for us to hear. So let's just get right into that.
All right, so I'll start where it all began. Um, Back in July of 2012, I was deep in my drinking, and I was literally watching a TV show about prisoners. And I was like, literally, the idea came to me, it's like, oh, I wonder if you can write a prisoner, and not a rational thought to have. Um, and I literally went to a website and found a prisoner to write. And, you know, um, people listening, why would you do that? Well, you shouldn't do that, but when you're not thinking clearly, you're going to do things that, you normally wouldn't do.
Right.
And I honestly didn't think this person was going to write me back. Did not think it at all. They did. And what ensued was something that I still get chuckles about today. Um, we started writing right away, like the following month in August of 2012. And he was very upfront with what brought him to prison. And it started really heavy with 2 letters a month. Plus, I was paying a lot of money on phone calls. Went to go visit him in person. Um, I was sending him money for. He originally was saying it was commissary. It was for drugs. Um, and I was sending it through people, not directly to him, but he'd give me this phone number, and I'd call this person I didn't know and send it Western Union. It was a whole big mess.
So he was in prison for drug charges.
No, he was actually in prison for he was drunk driving, and the girl he was with died.
Oh,
Um,
that's sad.
but drugs were part of his story. They didn't help, you know. Um, but he had previous DUIs and things like that. Um, and he had about like a 10-year sentence. Um, so, you know, and I'm listening to the story. Most people are like, maybe I should shy away from this. No. Um, and we're going on for a couple of years. And around 2014, he tells me he got married to a woman from New York. And he didn't love her. He was just addicted to the attention and the money she gave him. And at that point, I was like, I'm going to stop. This is like, I'm getting way too deep into this. Um, this is unhealthy. I shouldn't be dealing with someone like this. And so for like a good 3, 4 months, I just didn't talk to him, ignored phone calls, letters, all that. And then I got sucked back in by some sappy letter. Um, and then, I started paying more money. Um, he started saying he wasn't safe in prison, that I needed to send him money because of his drug habit. And, and he was manipulating me quite a bit at that point. But he was always deeply personal with the things that he would tell me. He would talk about his son, he would talk about his mother, his sisters, his family, um, sorry he was. And I fell for it.
Were you
You know,
drawn to him because of this perception that he created about himself, or what was drawing you back to him, and to him originally?
I had like to me it was like this ultimate romantic story. Like, I wanted to believe in redemption, right? For him and for me, right? He made a lot of mistakes. He went to prison, he did his time. He was sorry, and I was coming through on the other side of this drinking, and he was going to get out, and we were going to build this big, beautiful life. And it was a fantasy. He was selling me a fantasy, and I bought it. And I needed it at that time for what I was going through. Um, but it was a very dangerous game to play.
Yeah.
And, it got to a point in about 2016 where I was getting really tired of giving him money. Um, you know, and so I backed off a little bit from that.
What kind of money were you giving him? Was this like pocket change? Was it something you had to budget for? Talk to us about that.
Oh God. So to put into context for those who don't know, at the time, a phone call, a 15-minute phone call through a prison was over $3. And um, I was giving him 150, $200 a week. Um, this was like part-time job type money.
Yeah.
Um, and that doesn't count the gas to going to see him. He was in a different state for a prison, so that was like another 35-minute drive. Um, you know, and the letter, it just easily $10,000 that was spent on him over the course of my correspondence with him. Easy. That's probably lowballing it, if I'm being honest. Um, because it was just like, oh, I need money for this, I need money for shoes or food or books, or I'm gonna take a course. And I'm like, okay, he's bettering himself. And I want to add in the middle of this, people were like, what are you doing? Like, it's not like no one tried to stop me. Um, I just was, I was not listening. Um, I was not. And then he started like talking, he was like we were like a year from him getting out, and he's like, oh, you should start looking into moving to my state, looking for a place. And I was like, all right, we're really serious and all this. Um, you know, and I was starting to look like a fool. And then like January 2017, this is where things really got exciting. I went to go see him in prison, and there was another woman visiting him. And um, that was interesting because the guards were just like, yeah, like we've never seen this before.
And
And
he was specifically visiting him.
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes, he told us he screwed up his scheduling. Um, because at the time you could get like one visitor at a time. And so um, and she couldn't get in because she had like a short sleeve shirt on, and there were strict like clothing guidelines. And so she couldn't get in. And then she didn't want me to go in. I was like, no, I'm pretty sure I need to tackle this. And but I went in, and the response alone should have. He's like, well, if you were that mad, you would have left by now, but you're not. So, and I stayed.
Really?
Yeah, yep, yep, I
Uh,
stayed.
so
Yeah.
at that moment you realized that he was playing the two of you, but you didn't care.
Well, I cared, but I was still so, I mean, deep down, I knew this was going nowhere. But in that moment, like I think I had kind of become addicted to the chaos of it all and um, the excitement of it all.
Yeah.
And um, I had invested so much time, energy, money, and it was like, there's just no way. And meanwhile, he's still married to this other woman. They didn't divorce in prison. He's still married to someone else, you know? And so
You knew this or you didn't know this?
I knew this. I knew this. And he said, well, she's contesting it, and I can't do much while I'm here in prison, which was valid. But um, if that's not the biggest red flag, I don't know what is.
Yeah.
And, then like a month before he gets out, he gives me his phone number, and then all the letters and all the calls stop. And I'm like, oh, and because he was known for he was always behind the glass too. And that's what I want to share. He was always behind the glass. There was never any like physical affection besides the first visit. It's always behind glass. I was talking on some dirty phone, like that was like never cleaned. Um,
Was there a
you know,
reason that like you couldn't be in a common area with him?
well, there was a common area, but he was always in trouble. He was always
Okay.
in solitary for fighting or for drugs or for some sort of infraction.
Okay.
And so it would start out as 30 days, ended up, 6 months, a year. And so it just 4 years behind class. And he just couldn't behave himself. He just could not. He was very violent. He was very, very violent. Um, and so that a lot of it was fighting. And, and so around this month mark before he gets out, I start panicking because I'm like, reality's hitting. um, this is coming to an end. And I'm like, maybe he's in solitary, maybe he got caught with something. And they're like, nope, nope. And I was like, all right. And so last month I didn't see him. And then he gets out and we do end up meeting up. And this is probably the dumbest part of the story. I end up driving 90 minutes at like 1 o'clock in the morning to go see him. An hour and a half away. Violent criminal, literally like the day after he gets out of prison. And
Where? Like where were you going to go see him? Like,
oh, it was like for context, I live in Massachusetts. He lived in Connecticut, like an hour and a half away.
okay. But did he have
Um,
like a house or like
oh, he was living with his mom at the time because he had
okay.
no um because evidently moving in with me wasn't an option anymore.
Yeah.
And so he was staying with her, and then I found out I had gotten pregnant by him.
That
Um,
night you did.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Oh.
that happened. And in the midst of all this, the girl that I met in prison, um, he's all over social media with her. They're in love and happy. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, this is a couple of counseling sessions. Um, like, I was just like, and what got scary was that she was messaging me through Facebook, and like the kind of the threats started, which kind of triggered the abortion. Um, you know, and I didn't, because he knew my address because he'd sent me letters, right? Um, so there was nothing in my head that said he wouldn't do something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So then I had to provide proof that I had terminated it. And, um, it was a very, very scary time. And, they quickly moved in together, got married, had a couple kids, um, and then that marriage fell apart. Um,
Were you
because he
keeping
started.
like up on their lives? Or is that something that you were keeping track of a lot?
Well, what happened was when he got out, there was one of his friends, and this is the strange part of this. Um, like one of his friends who he met in prison, he gave them my phone number without my knowledge, and he's like, "Oh, she's cute," and I'm like, "Oh, he said that," so he's just like handing out my phone number like it was nothing, and they messaged me when they got out. And he was keeping me up to tabs on what was going on too. And because he was trying to hit on me when he got out too. I was like, okay. And of course, it was all over social media too. But at some point, I did block all the accounts and everything because it was starting to, you know, get a little too much, all the information that was coming in. And at some point, everything died down, it just stopped. And then, like in 2022, he texted me out of nowhere just to see if like how I was doing or whatever, and I did not answer it. Um, and then like about in 2023, ex he was she met his now second ex-wife messaged me, and she was getting a divorce from him.
And you had never met this person before until she reached out to you.
Well, she was the one I initially met in prison.
Oh,
Um,
okay. So,
yeah,
so just to be clear, so the girl in prison that you met when you showed up at the same time, this was
yes,
his second wife, and then the first wife is somebody completely different.
yeah. She met him. The first wife met him through this Right a Prisoner website. She was from New
Okay.
York.
Okay.
And the second one was, yes, for clarification, was the one that I met in the prison.
Okay.
And he ended up being really violent towards her and um, cheating on her, all the things. And um, and he was already moved on to another girl, and she was pregnant, baby number four. And um, and I felt bad when she messaged me. Like I genuinely felt bad because I didn't have any hard feelings towards her. Um, you know, it's not like we were best friends, but I definitely didn't want to see anyone hurt at his hands, especially when there's kids involved. Um,
Yeah.
you know, and so as it stands now, he's on like his third marriage. He has five kids and three different women. Um, you know, and I don't I don't think I missed out on much. Um,
I don't think you did either.
and I'm not gonna lie, there were times like after she messaged me, like I looked up his name, and there were other arrests that had happened for him, you know. So the pattern didn't really change with him.
Yeah. How did so when she originally or reached out to you via text,
Mm.
how did she find you? Do you know?
I think what happened is that he had had my phone number in his phone, and she probably got it off of that. That's the only thing I can think of, because I didn't have her phone number.
Yeah.
We did not talk, and when she had messaged me on Facebook, we didn't exchange phone numbers.
Mm. Do you know, like, do you remember specifically what she said to you when she reached out?
Well, she didn't tell me who she was, and I had a feeling who it was. Um, and eventually I said, "Is this so and so?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay." And I think it was like her roundabout way of saying like you didn't miss out on anything.
Mm. And at this time is when she shared that he had, I'm assuming, beat her up or did something of that magnitude.
Yeah. Yeah, they had a nice condo. I guess he wrecked it pretty bad. Um, he hurt her. There was a lot of drugs involved, and I think he had gotten kind of her involved in that sort of struggle with drugs. Used her for a lot of money. Really bad toxic family situation. Just was spending money left and right. Just was not a good, healthy, safe situation at all. And she already had two previous children from a previous relationship. And so she now had four kids and had to deal with the mess that was him, you
Yeah.
know? He was, I'm sorry. Like he was,
That is so I guess to put like an ending to the story. So after she had reached out to you and had this conversation with you, did it go any further than that, or this was kind of like the last event that happened with your, I guess, don't want to say relationship, but connection with this man?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I remember after she told me a lot of what happened with him, the abuse and the drugs and the cheating. I felt the need to, like, I sent her, um, like a Mother's Day text, around that time. And because I think it wasn't like we were going to be best friends after all this happened, but I think there was like a mutual understanding that, he took us both for a ride and we were both in a vulnerable situation. And, it was kind of like a nod to each other, like I see you, we're good, and I wish you well type of thing. Um, and I do wish her well because I think it was just a terrible situation all around. And that I'm not, and then all these stories came out about other women he was messaging in prison. And because one thing you want to remember is like when you're sitting waiting to be called to go see who you're visiting, the women and everything are going to talk. And the women would talk to me, and some women would actually tell me in the waiting room, like, my husband's saying you should stay away from this one. You're not the only one. They tell me that.
But that wasn't
And
enough.
it wasn't enough because I'm like, I don't know these women. I don't know. But I knew I was just in a really vulnerable spot, and I'm lucky I didn't get hurt through it, like
Oh,
physically hurt through it.
how old were you at the time of all of this happening?
So I was in, I was 20, no, I'm sorry, I correct that. I was 33 when it started. So I
Really?
wasn't, yeah, I was not like a young, I was not, or 32, I'm sorry. I was not like a young, like 18, 19-year-old girl who maybe was extremely naive to the world. Like I was a mom, I had a son. I was sacrificing time with my son to go see this person. Um, like so I knew better. Like I was grown. Like, I knew better. Um, but I just my life was in such a way that I was like I needed something to believe in, and instead of believing in myself, I believe this fairy tale this fool sent me. And I still have some of the letters just to look back and kind of laugh at myself. And I'm like, you fell for that? Like
Yeah.
he spoke a couple of Spanish lines to you and you fell for that. Oh, okay. Okay. Like, so it was just poems and song lyrics. And I'm like, this is so cheesy, Kathy. Come on. What are we doing?
So the people that were around you that were either family or friends that were saying, "What are you doing?" Did
Mhm.
any of them ever, did this ever disrupt your relationships with them? Like, did they ever kick you to the curb or distance yourself or distance themselves from you?
Well, my mom, because at the time, for a couple of years, I was living with her. And I remember she went through the roof when she got like a letter from the correctional facility to her home. Um, she went through the roof and she's like, either it stops or you got to get out. And so all I did was get a PO box, so like, you know, so yes, there were people who it did affect relationships. I was sacrificing time with them to go see him and to work more to fund his habits. With time with my son, which I still don't feel good about to this day. Um, yeah, it was people were trying. I just wasn't listening.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, a lot of people in these kinds of situations, at least from what I heard, have a similar experience to yours where the the person that they're dealing with has such a grip or a spell over them that it kind of gives them tunnel vision as far as the reality of life. And in that tunnel vision, at the end of the tunnel, it's just that single person that has a complete grip on them and they can't see it any different.
And part of what I think was happening with me is that like when I started seeing him, I was a complete mess. I was overweight, I was drinking heavy. And I started working out, working more, I was looking better, and I was crediting him with that success,
Mm,
you know? And it took a lot of unwinding of really bad thought patterns to be like, no, you got this all twisted up, right? Um, yeah, it's a really, and sadly, I really wish they'd take that website down. I really wish they would. It's still up, and I'm like, oh, just take it down.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, that's hard. So it sounds like to me that you don't have an idea of where he is today.
Well, I know he remarried, um, and know he has, a couple more kids. I don't know what he's doing career-wise or anything like that. Um, I have no clue. Um, and it's probably better that way. Um, but no, I don't, and I think it's for the best to not, poke that bear again.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think that's for the best as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for coming on and telling the story. I think it's very unique because we have had stories of people who have been criminals, but we have not had a story like this where someone is pursuing someone in prison. So this will be an interesting one for the listeners. Um, is there any advice or anything that you would like to leave the listeners with before we close this out?
I think before you get into any relationship, you really need to know your worth, and your value. And that would be my biggest um, advice and suggestion is really know your worth, know your value. And if the people around you are saying maybe you should think twice, you probably want to look in the mirror and think twice. Um, because there are humorous parts to this story, but it could end in a very dangerous way. So know your worth, know your value, and listen to your people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks again. And for the listeners, as always, make sure you subscribe and save or streaming anywhere you can get your podcasts. Make sure you follow us on social media as well. It's Romance Unraveled on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And if you would like to contribute to the financial success of the show, you can do so on our Linktree links on either social media platform, and you can buy us a coffee for $5. If you have a story that you would like to share, just like Catherine did, you can reach out to me directly in one of those platforms and I'll get you scheduled to come on to the show. Until next time.